last week of learning any new content or going over any new content or any new assignments or anything like that. I know it's been like pretty crazy school semester, but you're at the end. You've made it. You're making it. So you just gotta push through this 1 week, and super excited. We're wrapping up human impact. This week we're gonna be kind of, wrapping up the unit by just kind of thinking about solutions, like big or small, and we've done a bunch of activities where we've got to like explore our own consumption and our own habits, and now it's time to think about what are some actions that we could take, that maybe we might be willing to take, that might decrease our human impact. Today though, we're doing a kind of little one-day segment that I really wanted to do with you guys about clothes, and I decided I was just gonna squeeze it in here in this last week because clothes is just one of the things that I'm still pretty new at learning about. It's only like recently, maybe in the last 6 months or so, that I actually even started like learning more about the clothes industry and how clothes like play a part in my impact. So and I think clothes are just one of those topics that it's pretty innocent, like seeming, because like we're just kind of sneakily encouraged to consume clothing items, and then we just like get rid of them. We don't really know where they go when we get rid of them, and we don't really know much about how our clothes are made or what's happening before it hits the store. So I think this is just like, it's just like the topic is interesting, and I figure you're at a time of your life where you like shopping anyway. Shopping is a pretty like common hobby for you, and for people my age too. But yeah, I hope you really just like find this topic interesting of what we're going to talk about, and just kind of like that's cool to know. All right. Clothes 101. Look at the closet. Okay, so first we're going to talk about end of life for clothes. So like, what is when we no longer want a piece of clothing, like what's going to happen to it, and where is it eventually going to end up at the very end of its life, when it it's supposed to start breaking down and whatnot. So ideally what we want to happen is that when we get rid of clothes because we no longer want it, or it's kind of it's not serving its function anymore for whatever reason, the ideal is that we want it to get put back into the clothing production cycle. And if that piece of clothing does get put back into the cycle, we call that a closed loop system or a cradle to cradle system. And that's the ideal, which means like it's not ending up in landfill, it's not getting incinerated, it's not ending up somewhere floating in the middle of the ocean to break down. It's being put back into the cycle to being used again to make more clothes. That's like the ideal. That was kind of like the whole ideal concept of recycling too. And so if we want to understand, what is probably going to happen to our clothes at the end of its life when we're getting rid of it, we need to pay attention to two factors: the material of the clothing, and we need to be aware of available technology for that material. So just really briefly, this is an example of Openloop versus Closedloop. So on the left, where you see it's kind of going in a straight line from materials to manufacturer to retailer to us, the consumer, and then waste, that is called an open loop system or cradle to grave. It's going like just in one line and nothing is coming back around. You don't get, when you throw stuff away, you don't get it coming back to the beginning or any part in the cycle. So that is a non-ideal system, because then you're just throwing things into waste, and then it's either going to fill up a landfill or be burned and whatnot. We already know problems with landfills and incineration. So on the right is what we ideally want to happen with our clothes, the closed loop cycle, or cradle to cradle, where after we are the user, right? We're the users of the clothes, and after we're maybe like we're getting tired of the clothes, or it's not serving its original purpose, or maybe it's broken for whatever reason, you see that there's several options to keep that piece of clothing in the loop and not like in the trash. First of all, we can maintain the clothes. That means we fix our clothing. And actually, I'm trying to get better at this and like learn ways of like fixing my own clothing, like holes or whatever. So I'm trying to learn how to sew. Maybe I'll learn how to sew this summer. And so just knowing how to repair your own clothing is actually it's like really useful in terms of like prolonging the life of your clothing, so that you don't have to get rid of it just because something ripped, You could maybe the provider, the retailer, takes back, clothing that's in good condition and resells it. This would be known as a second-hand clothing shop or whatever. Refurbishing, if it goes back to the manufacturer, they might repurpose that clothing item for something else and kind of like maybe upcycle it or downcycle it or whatever. And then finally you can recycle the material and it turns back into raw material that can then be used to make a brand new whatever. So we want to ideally try to have we want to be contributing to this picture on the right, the cradle to cradle cycle. So I'm just going to go over like a few the most common materials you're probably going to come across in your own closet and in my closet. And first I just want to talk about natural versus synthetic materials. So your natural materials, they're biodegradable because they're natural in the sense that they can grow out of the ground. So if it's plant-based or animal-based or whatever, it was organic, an organic material, so it can eventually like die and break down and turn back into like soil or something. So it's renewable. It definitely plays into the cradle to cradle system inherently. The thing though is it can be resource expensive, which means it might take a lot of resources to be growing the plant, or raising enough animals so that you can get the wool or the fur or the whatever. And that really depends on if there's a huge demand for cotton, let's say, then you have to grow a lot of cotton, and then that can use up a lot of water. So kind of depending on how big the demand is and how people, retailers or manufacturers, they want the material like now, or they want the material like yesterday or something. And so kind of just demanding that we need to have like a bajillion pounds of cotton now can be, how are you supposed to like grow all that like right now? Then you need it. Then you can start like using up a lot of resources trying to just make something happen like now. Synthetic materials, on the other hand, they're man-made, so we have a lot more control on making it quickly, or how batch making synthetic materials or whatever. That's one of the reasons why we even started making these materials, is that we had more control over making the supply meet the demand. They're non-biodegradable. It's going to take a very long time to break down naturally, if at all. It's made from non-renewable resources, usually like petroleum or oil or something like that. And one of the big things about synthetic materials, they're not expensive, pretty cheap, and very versatile in the same way that plastic is cheap and versatile. And that's one of the allures of using synthetic materials for clothing. It's just not as expensive for the bottom line. Okay, so cotton. We all know cotton. It's good, it's soft. So on the left, when I have the plus sign, that's pros, minus signs is cons. It's good for sensitive skin because it's soft. It's machine washable, which means it's easy to take care of, and it's biodegradable because it's a plant. So that's great. But just because something is biodegradable or natural, it doesn't mean it's necessarily sustainable, because there's other factors you have to consider, which is why I have pros and cons for literally every of the 4 materials I'm going to go over. What are some cons? It fades and shrinks. So then if you're not careful about, hot water or whatever, you might find, oh, my shirt shrank, and now what am I supposed to do with it? I guess I'll throw it away. So that might be a problem. The big thing about cotton is that it uses a lot of water, like a lot of water to grow. And because of, such high demand for growing, or, with cotton, it's known for using a lot of pesticides to, keep pests off the cotton and protect the cotton, and so that you can be mass growing it or whatever. And so then you have chemicals and pesticides and whatever all over your cotton material that's being made and sold for you. Although you see at the bottom left, organic cotton is non-GMO and grown without pesticides. So organic cotton is probably the most sustainable option in terms of cotton. Just because, like, even if you yourself are not worried about, like, I don't care about, like, pesticides on my clothing or whatever, and it probably isn't going to affect you, fine. That's not really the point. The point is that if a farmer or grower or whatever is using pesticides, that means those chemicals are now leaching into the soil and now contaminating the soil, and it's eventually going to contaminate any nearby waterways when it rains, and then, like, the water on the soil is going to, like, carry some of the soil down to the river, and it's going to carry those chemicals into the river or whatever. That's really the problem when you're using pesticides on your crops. And then the thing about cotton is it becomes weaker as it is recycled. So, it can't be recycled indefinitely. I mean, the nice thing is that it's biodegradable, so that's not really a problem. But, recycling is not going to last indefinitely for cotton. Okay, polyester. Probably the most common synthetic material you have in your closet or anyone's closet. It's made from petroleum, okay? Some pros, it's very durable. It's machine washable, it is cheap, and it's easily recycled. And that's a nice thing. We've actually developed we have pretty good technology for recycling petroleum. But, like, as I said, like, not all synthetic materials can easily be recycled. We don't have the technology to easily recycle every kind of material that we've created. The cons about polyester is that it doesn't biodegrade, obviously, because it's synthetic. It requires a lot of energy to make, so you're using, and since most of our energy is reliant on non-renewable energy sources, you're using a lot of non-renewable energy to make your polyester, and so that necessarily means it relies on fossil fuels. Now, the thing I want to focus on for a little bit, microfibers. Every time you wash your polyester clothing, or really any clothing, tiny little itty bitty microfibers are going to come away from the clothing and kind of just get washed into your washing machine drain, and then into the sewage pipe or whatever, and it goes to the ocean. And if it's so small, like microfiber size, like on the micro scale, our water treatment facilities, they cannot catch something that small. So then this tiny itty bitty fiber of polyester, which is plastic, it just goes into the ocean because our water treatment facilities, it just cannot catch something that's that small. And so now these little bitty bits of microfibers from our polyester or other synthetic materials, it's not just polyester, it's literally everything is going into the ocean, and then marine animals are like ingesting these tiny bits of plastic clothing, and then it starts to bioaccumulate in them, and eventually it makes its way to us because we eat things from the ocean too. So every time we wash our clothes, it's something I'm now kind of aware of, is that, like, I'm contributing a little bit to, like, these little tiny fibers that are being washed away. So maybe a solution for that would be, like, if you have those mesh, like those laundry bags or whatever, like, sometimes I'll put, like, synthetic clothing, if it's, like, a small, like, shirt or something, I'll put it in the mesh laundry bag to kind of help trap some, fuzz or whatever might be coming off of it. Okay, so wool is, it's a natural material. It's an animal protein fiber, sheep, alpaca, goats, etc. One of the really nice things about wool, it's fire resistant. So, like, if you got a wool mattress, like a pure wool mattress, it would, like, you wouldn't have to worry about it, like, if it caught on fire that it would like suddenly burst into flames, because wool is naturally fire resistant. It's also hypoallergenic, which is nice, and biodegradable. Potential problems: animal cruelty issues, because you gotta raise sheep and or whatever animals to obtain the wool. Wool, the actual material is kind of high maintenance to take care of. You got to be careful when you're washing it. So sometimes, like, if you're like, I don't really want to spend the extra time and energy to like take care of this material, then you might find that it wears out faster, and then you need a new whatever it is faster. And then again, use of pesticides. But organic wool production would solve that issue of pesticides or chemicals or whatever. Acrylic is the last material I'm going to mention. It's a man-made alternative to wool. So basically, and a lot of if you do some research on your own, a lot of synthetics, they're kind of like man-made alternatives to something else that was natural. But when it's man-made, we have a lot more control over it. We can take what was natural and kind of enhance some qualities. So like acrylic, it's like wool. It's going to be warm and whatever, but it's easy to maintain. So like it's not as high maintenance in its care as wool. It's also inexpensive, of course. Every synthetic, the con is going to be the microfiber pollution. It's also energy and fossil fuel intensive, just like polyester. And unlike polyester, there is not current technology that allows it to easily be recycled. So acrylic is not really recyclable feasibly anyway. So that's kind of one thing to watch out for. As I said earlier, not all synthetics can easily be recycled as of right now. Okay, so we talked about end of life, but we need to also now spend some time looking at the beginning of life for this piece of clothing. We want to know, how is this product made? How environmentally friendly is the extraction of the materials and the production of the actual clothing item? Is there fair labor? Are the people that are making this being treated fairly and getting a fair wage? Are the animals, or what if there are animals involved in making the clothing, are they being treated fairly or whatever? So because for something to be truly sustainable and environmentally friendly, you need both halves. You need to have a good beginning of life and a good end of life. And so for beginning of life, we're going to investigate the brand of our clothing. So when you're assessing brands, you could start by going to the company website and you look at what the company has to say about their sustainability efforts. A lot more companies these days have some sort of page somewhere that says like, these are our sustainability goals for 2020 or for the next 10 years or something like that. Just be careful for greenwashing. Greenwashing is when a company is trying to make themselves sound more environmentally friendly than they actually are being. For example, like if they said, oh, we use organic cotton in our clothing, but literally only one shirt has organic cotton and that's it, that's not really being environmentally friendly, because like that's just like a tiny part of their clothing line, right? So that'd be an example of greenwashing. One of the things you want to look for if you are looking at the company's website to see like, what are they doing? What are they changing about their manufacturing and stuff to be more environmentally friendly? You want to look for transparency. If the company is not being specific, if a company had nothing to hide, they would be specific. Like, this is exactly what we're doing. We source our materials from this, and we make sure it's being sustainably sourced, like via whatever, and blah, blah, blah. Like, the more specific a company is, the more transparent they are, the more you can trust it, and that like they're not like, hiding anything. A really good way to assess a brand is through a third-party reviewer. So it's like, don't take what the company says, but like look at what an auditor or a reviewer is going to say about the company. And so again, bringing back certifications. Certifications are so important because like you need to pass like a rigorous investigation to like get this certification. So some certifications relevant to clothing brands would be GOTS. GOTS is Guaranteed Organic Textile something or other, but it's like for organic cotton and stuff, organic natural materials. Fair trade. Fair trade means that your workers are actually being treated fairly. It's fair labor, stuff like that. B Corp. Not really going to go into that, but B Corp is basically just, it certifies that a corporation is not just looking out for its bottom line. It's also trying to like be taking care of like the environment and people and whatnot. Non-GMO, we already know what that means. Third-party reviews. The two that I know of by now in my life is a website called Good On You and something called an Ethical Fashion Report, which is published once a year. So I'm going to show you both of them because you're going to be using one of them, either of them, in the activity that you're doing with your closet. So, okay, this is Good On You. It's a website and an app, and basically you type in a brand name, and it'll find the brand, and then it's going to rate the brand based on 3 categories: the planet, so environmental friendliness; people, that's labor, fair labor; and animals, animal cruelty. And it's it rates it 1 to 5 in each of the categories, and then it explains like why it gets this rating. So I put in Forever 21 because it's the most common brand I could think of, although it recently was going out of business. So look, planet, but a pretty low score, and then you can see that in the explanation, Forever 21's environment rating is very poor because it does not publish sufficient relevant information about its environmental policies, meaning it's not being transparent. It's not telling us how it's being environmentally friendly or sustainable. Labor rating is not good enough. And again, this website also references back to the Ethical Fashion Report, which I'm going to show you. And it looks like it's doing okay with animals, animal cruelty and stuff like that. So yeah, this website I found is really good for like kind of just looking like, oh, what is how ethical is a certain brand being. And then at the very bottom of the page, you can't see it because I took a screenshot, but at the very bottom of the page, it'll tell you when this brand page was last updated, because they, whoever's running this website, they update information as companies change, because a company each year has a chance to be changing and making new policies and stuff like that. Okay. Really quickly, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you this because I'm putting this as a resource for you to use, and I don't want you to like freak out when you see it, because it's a report, and it's like it's a bear when you first look at it. So this is a 2019 one. At the very beginning, what is this, page 5 or whatever, in your executive summary, you'd have this section where you have like all these companies, and you have an overall grade at the top of like A through F or something, and this is like the overall grade is based on an average of 5 other grades in different sections: policies, transparency, auditing, supplier relationships, worker empowerment, so that's like your labor and stuff like that, and then environmental management, so that's your environmental sustainability. And so this is like an overall grade for companies, but I'm gonna try to like skim to the bottom of this. There's a lot of information here if you get really like interested in this. Companies represent a bunch of brands, right? So one company might have a bunch of brands under it, and so this is the brand index. So you see that like Abercrombie is the parent company, but it has a bunch of brands like Abercrombie, Hollister, Gilly Hicks, and Abercrombie Kids, and it has a grade of a D-, according to 2019. So this would give you more information about a specific brand if you're curious about that. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to show you, just if you wanted to look through that so that you understand kind of how it works. Okay. Now, a little bit of a bonus, just, hard-earned tips from me to you, because I've spent so much time trying to look at, like, I think just unfortunately in America, or maybe just in the Bay Area where I currently live, there aren't a lot of options in terms of, like, textile recycling or whatever, and it's just, like, I mean, there are a lot of other programs in Europe that are much more fully developed, but, like, I've found some things that, programs for getting rid of clothes and shoes. So Nike is where I would take my shoes that are worn out, particularly running shoes. I think they mainly accept like athletic shoes and stuff like that. And Nike will grind up old shoes and turn it into like either material for new shoes or like the playground kind of rubber for playgrounds and stuff like that. So that's a really good example of just reusing material into like another purpose. H&M has a program where they will accept clothing of any condition, supposedly, and they will send it to a textile recycling. And this is really cool because I literally spent 2 hours one day of my life searching for textile recycling near me, and I just could not find anything that was near me. I found a bunch of places in Europe, but nothing near me. But H&M will accept clothing, and I would, I think this is great for clothing where it's like it's very worn out. Like there is no like giving it away to someone or secondhand, whatever, because it's like actually worn out. Then at that point, your only option is really to send it to a textile recycling company where they can like strip it to its actual material fibers and then reuse it. And lastly, I just want to say that you really got to do your research with when you're looking for like, oh, what's a sustainable option for getting rid of my old clothes or my shoes or whatever. Not all solutions are created equal. You really need to understand where is it going. So an example of a couple mistakes I've made in my life, and I know better. North Face has this program called Closedloop. And basically they say that they accept clothes and shoes in any condition, and you get like this voucher, $5 off North Face or whatever. And so I would give them like my shoes and my shoes that like were like so worn out, like they just weren't good to wear anymore. And then I did some digging around and some research into their program. And first of all, there's two things. First, for one, the fact that they give a voucher like to shop for giving away your clothes and stuff like that is kind of like encouraging you to continue this consumption cycle of like, here, let me just buy more and then like give it away and then buy more and then donate or whatever. So that's not really ideal. Second of all, at least for the North Face shops in America, because they have this program in America and Europe. In America, what happens to these clothes and shoes or whatever is they send it to this organization somewhere else, maybe like I think it's like in the Caribbean or something, that is basically going to try to sell these shoes and clothing. So like this program is meant to support entrepreneurship in developed countries. The problem with that, if your shoes are so like dead that like literally nobody would want to wear them, they won't be able to be sold by this entrepreneurship program that North Face is trying to support. And what's going to happen if they can't sell these shoes or clothes? They're going to just throw it away because they can't do what they're trying to do with it. And so really this North Face program isn't a good solution for things that are literally like they're worn out, they're not in good condition anymore. It's really only good for stuff that is still in good condition and could still probably be sold to other people. Goodwill also. Goodwill is where I would just like literally dump all of like any clothes I wanted to get rid of, even if they were like in bad condition because I wore it out or whatever. I just didn't really understand what was happening when I donated my stuff to Goodwill. Well, now I know. It's a literal, like, it's a shop. Like, they take your donations and they're supposed to sell it to people. And depending on the Goodwill store, not all stores, not all stores are going to treat their items the same way. But if a store can't sell something and it's been months and they can't sell something, well, then they've got to get rid of it because it's just taking up space in the store, right? And so maybe some Goodwill stores will like send their clothes stuff to a textile recycling, but some don't. Maybe they're just going to throw it away. And then you thought you were donating your clothes and keeping it out of landfill, but it actually still ended up in landfill because it was, it had a hole in it or a rip in it and it couldn't be sold. So now, like, if I have clothing that's like really like it's not good anymore because maybe it ripped or whatever, I'm gonna take it to H&M because then they're supposed to be sending it to textile recycling, and I won't give it to somewhere like Goodwill where the actual point of donations is so that they can sell it for a cheaper price to to people that maybe can't afford the full price. So that's what I mean by like you have to like do your research and kind of be careful about like understanding like what is actually happening to my clothes or shoes in this solution. Yeah. Okay. Oh. That was it. I hope you guys found that enjoyable. And also, this is Barbara. This is my narwhal's friend, my other marine friend. Yeah, so also just continue sending in your Unit 6 and 7 notebook checks if you haven't. Thank you to those of you that have already sent it in. I think I have like at least 75% of everyone's in. Just know that I will start putting the points in for Unit 7. I started with Unit 7 first. If you are missing any points, you're free to email me. I may have emailed you as well. And I may just let you know that like, hey, you're missing this assignment. That doesn't mean you have to do it if you don't want to, because your grade might be fine. I'm just letting you know that like if you had it done and you just kind of forgot to show it in the video, that you're not getting points for something that you did. Anyway, I hope you have an amazing Monday, and I will see you later.